Crikey, and welcome back to Animals Around the World. Our journey today takes us across the world to the plains of Africa. Many animals inhabit the African plains. Crikey, there's a wild lion. These majestic beasts are at the top of the food chain here. I'm gonna poke it with a stick. The lionesses are the ones that do the hunting for these brutes. They go out, away from their pride, and search for food. Look, they've stumbled upon a group of wildebeest and have begun their approach. As they get closer, they see there is a baby wildebeest with their target. Now the lions are faced with a dilemma. They can kill the wildebeest separated from the rest of the group and leave the baby wildebeest to be an orphan, or they can spare them both and look for food elsewhere. The lions must decide if they want to use the rights approach or the virtue approach to this dilemma. The rights approach is defined by Manuel Velázquez's A Framework for Thinking Ethically as the ethical action is the one that best protects and respects the moral rights of those affected. This approach stems from the belief that based on their nature or on their ability to choose freely what they will do with their lives. On the basis of such dignity, they have a right to be treated not merely as means to other ends. The way this approach functions is that it decides which interest has greater merit and gives priority to the right that best protects or ensures that interest. This approach gives those involved a reasonable expectancy, among other things, to have a right to what has been promised by those whom have freely entered into an agreement. Hey, will you do my laundry for some chocolate?
Sure.
Thanks. This approach works against the favor of the wildebeest because it focuses around facts and truths to make a decision. The approach is based upon respecting one's own needs and rights, not just the rights of others. In this case, that right would be referring to one's right to live, whether that of the wildebeest or the lion is yet to be decided. Based upon this approach, the course of action most likely chosen would be to kill the wildebeest as though the lions don't starve. This approach focuses on the idea that anyone decides what life they lead and implies their first duty is to themselves. Or they could take the virtue approach. This approach states that ethical actions ought to be consistent with certain ideal virtues. These virtues are dispositions and habits that enable us to act according to the highest potential of our character. Virtue ethics asks of any action, what kind of person will I be if I do this? What defines a virtue thought? Velázquez defined virtues as such traits as honesty, kindness, patience, civility, compassion, diligence, self-reliance, and loyalty, amongst others. A situation used to describe the rights approach would be,
Let's go! Let's wipe the building!
it is that person's choice to do so and help get other people to safety as well. But their first obligation would be to themselves and not others. They must decide what to do, save just themselves or others as well. This approach specifically applies because the ultimate decision made would either save or kill the one wildebeest and potentially orphan another. Based upon the virtue approach, the best course of action would be to leave the pair alone and go hunt for food elsewhere. Taking the virtue approach often means putting others before oneself. Both approaches rely on ethics that are solely up to the holder to determine. Both approaches also look to the future. Virtue asks the question, who will I become if I do this? While the rights approach asks, can I maintain my free will if I do this? Between the two approaches, the lionesses would choose the rights approach. Not only do they make a pact with the rest of their pride when going out hunting to bring back food, but they also have their own obligation to feed their children. The lionesses put their own needs above that of the baby wildebeest, who will now be